Sweden hasn't fired a shot in declared war since 1814, but today, its neighbors are calling it indispensable. And its enemies? They're scared. This is a country whose silent submarines send ripples across the Baltic, whose factories are churning out some of Europe's most capable weaponry, and whose transformation from neutrality to NATO frontline has been both rapid and deliberate. The last time Sweden decided to engage in war, it had half of Europe on its knees. I'm Tuomas, a former officer in the Finnish Defense Forces. Having been in the army of one of the two weird former neutral countries up north, I've trained a lot with the Swedish Armed Forces, and let me tell you, Sweden has gone from being Europe's quiet underspending peacekeeper to one of its most strategically important defenders. In this video, we'll explore why allies love Sweden, and it's not just because of flat-pack furniture and meatballs, and why its enemies are fearing it to the extent that sabotage is now an almost monthly occurrence in Sweden. Let's start with Sweden's dramatic strategic pivot. For over 200 years, Sweden maintained a policy of military neutrality. But after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, that policy ended. In March 2024, Sweden officially joined NATO. This wasn't just symbolic, it was historic. With one decision, Sweden went from being a buffer to becoming a full-fledged NATO member, now protected by Article 5 and fully embedded in collective defense planning. It's also a member of the Joint Expeditionary Force and part of the NB8 cooperation framework, linking it tightly with the Nordics, Baltics, Poland, the UK, and the Netherlands. That's not just a flag on a map, that's a security net, backed by real firepower. And Sweden is putting its money where its mouth is. Since 2017, the country has nearly tripled its defense budget. From around 1% of GDP, it has climbed to over 2.4% in 2024 and is expected to hit 5% by 2030. In June 2025, the Swedish Parliament approved a €27 billion borrowing package, its biggest since the Cold War. 22 billion of that is earmarked purely for defense. Stockholm isn't just making headlines, it's making commitments. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute recently noted that Sweden's 2024 military budget rose by 34%, topping €12 billion. Sweden is now one of Europe's top per capita defense spenders, alongside Denmark, Norway, Finland, Poland, and the Baltic states. Why does this matter? Because Sweden isn't just building a bigger military, it's building smarter. Its defense industry, centered around Saab, Bofors, and Hägglunds, is a well-oiled machine. The same country that gave us IKEA and Volvo also produces the Gripen fighter jet, Carl Gustaf recoilless rifles, Archer self-propelled artillery, anti-tank missiles, air defense systems, corvettes, drones, and some of the stealthiest submarines in the world. These aren't just for show. They're battle-tested and in demand across the world. Let's break it down further. Sweden is overhauling its ground forces with a clear focus on mobility, resilience, and firepower. The current force of around 100,000 active and reserve personnel is being expanded and reorganized into a modern structure expected to exceed 115,000. At the core of Sweden's armored strength is the Stridsvagn 122 main battle tank. Sweden operates approximately 110 of these, which is now being upgraded to the new 123 variant. In addition, 44 brand new Leopard 2A8 tanks are on the way. The domestically developed CV-90 infantry fighting vehicle, already proving its worth on the battlefields of Ukraine, is also being modernized. Sweden fields roughly 500 of these vehicles, and they are now being outfitted with the latest in anti-drone technology and electronic warfare systems. Meanwhile, more than 48 Archer self-propelled howitzers are entering active service, and Sweden's troops are beginning to receive the newly introduced AK-24 carbine. At sea, Sweden maintains a capable and modern fleet, with several standout platforms tailored for operations in the Baltic's shallow and congested waters. The most advanced surface vessels are the 4 Visby-class stealth corvettes, fast, agile, and nearly invisible to radar. These are now being upgraded with surface-to-air missiles and vertical launch systems to enhance their punch and survivability. Beneath the waves, 3 Gotland-class submarines prowl silently, Ultra-stealthy and highly maneuverable, they are built to evade detection and strike with precision, ideal for denying access to hostile fleets. In NATO exercises, these subs have already proven their edge by outclassing more conventional counterparts. Looking ahead, the Swedish Navy has placed orders for next-generation A-26 submarines and the new Luleå-class corvettes, signaling a long-term commitment to undersea and littoral dominance. In the air, the Swedish Air Force is anchored by the JAS Gripen, one of the most cost-effective multi-role jets in the world. Sweden is currently upgrading to the Gripen E variant, of which they plan to have at least 60 on top of their 100 or so older C and D variants, adding advanced radar, weapon systems, and electronic warfare capabilities. It's also bringing in 3 Global Eye airborne early warning aircraft and a dozen Black Hawks to support mobility and rescue missions. Complementing these are new radar systems from Saab, Lockheed Martin, and Thalys, forming a layered early warning network integrated with NATO. Sweden's upgrades aren't just about gear, they're about positioning. With its strategic location on the Baltic Sea, Sweden is central to any NATO planning against aggression in the east, as we discussed in our recent episode on why the Nordics would be a big mistake to invade. Find that link in the description and comments. Sweden's territory offers a launchpad for reinforcement into Finland or the Baltics, and its Navy, Air Force, and Special Forces are now permanently ready to respond across the region. In June 2025, Sweden even committed to pre-positioning heavy equipment in my native Finland, enhancing regional deterrence and rapid deployment capability, something we haven't seen since the Cold War. And it's not just Sweden talking. NATO allies are watching closely and approving. Sweden hosted massive multinational exercises in 2025 involving troops from the US, UK, Finland, and Germany. It's also become a vital link in NATO's Baltic Sea strategy. From joint air policing to seabed infrastructure protection, Sweden is contributing far more than its size might suggest. In fact, for its defense investment, Sweden is punching well above its weight. So why do allies love Sweden? Except for the meatballs, it is because it's reliable, invested, and capable. Sweden doesn't just show up for drills, it builds the kit, trains the forces, and writes the checks. And when it comes to production, it's leading by example. From anti-tank capability, tanks, IFVs, and anti-air systems delivering the goods in Ukraine to next-gen air surveillance planes, contributing to taking down Russia's most advanced jets, Sweden is one of NATO's most self-sufficient producers alongside France. But there's another reason its closest allies love Sweden: its geography. For Norway, Finland, and Denmark, Sweden acts as a secure land bridge, a critical corridor for moving troops and materiel across the Scandinavian peninsula. In a crisis, it enables fast west-east military transit. For the Baltics, Sweden is a jump-off point, a launchpad for NATO reinforcements into Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania if an invasion were to occur. With airfields, ports, and rapid deployment forces along the eastern coast and on Gotland, Sweden is not just protected, it's pivotal. In short, Sweden isn't on the periphery anymore. It's the connective tissue holding Northern Europe's defenses together. But why do enemies fear Sweden? As you'll probably notice in the comment section of this video after a while, there'll be a whole host of people trying to disinform viewpoints about Sweden being a liberal socialistic hellscape with no courage. But from my experience, that is far from true and rather Russian and American talking points. Sweden's enemies, particularly Russia, Islamist fundamentalists in the Middle East like Iran, and even some evangelical extremists within the United States, fear it because it has become unpredictable in the best possible way. No longer the neutral observer of decades past, Sweden today commands real military power and isn't afraid to use it. Its submarines can cripple a fleet. Its jets can jam, strike, and disappear. Its artillery can stop armored columns before they ever reach the coastline. And perhaps most importantly, it's no longer shy about asserting itself on the world stage. It trains side by side with the UK, coordinates operations with Finland and Norway, and reinforces the Baltic defense line with quiet confidence. At the same time, it stands as living proof that a nation can be strong, free, and deeply democratic, without needing a Tsar, a supreme leader, or a wannabe king peddling cheap perfume while president. But the threat landscape is no longer just about tanks and planes. Russia, Iran, China, and its proxies are shifting to hybrid tactics, and Sweden is a key target. In the past year, at least 11 undersea cables in the Baltic Sea have been willfully damaged, disrupting internet and energy infrastructure between Sweden, Finland, Latvia, and Poland. Sweden's Prime Minister has called the region a high-risk zone, and while no one is officially naming names except Finland and the Baltics, the evidence points towards state-sponsored sabotage by both China and Russia. This threat isn't hypothetical. NATO launched Operation Baltic Sentry in early 2025 to protect seabed cables and pipelines from further interference. Naval patrols, drones, and maritime surveillance assets now comb the Baltic in response. It has already proven effective. As this video shows, Russia now has to allocate resources to try to scare NATO nations from seizing their oil and tankers. The danger to Sweden doesn't stop at sea. In northern Sweden, the Kiruna Railway is critical, not just for iron ore exports, but for military logistics between Norway and Sweden. This train line has been derailed several times over the last few years, and suspicions are mounting as to why this keeps happening. And then there's cyberspace. Swedish infrastructure, banks, and government systems have all been subjected to phishing attempts, DDoS attacks, and espionage probes, much of it traced back to Russian-linked groups. The goal isn't just disruption, it's disorientation. This is the kind of war Sweden is preparing for. Not just missiles and jets, but shadow fleets, cut cables, cyber strikes, and sabotage. Hybrid conflict isn't coming, it's already here. And Sweden is standing at the front. For Russia, that's a serious problem. In a world where some allies hesitate and enemies test the line, Sweden of 2025 doesn't blink. It builds, trains, deploys, and delivers. Allies trust it. Adversaries fear and hate it, or regret underestimating it. So the next time you glance at a map of Northern Europe, don't let the quiet, nice Swede fool you. Sweden's not waiting to catch up. It's already ready, and they've only just begun. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And as promised, if you want more brain-tingling content like this, we've left some tasty links down in the description and comments. If you're already sunbathing on a beach and sipping something cold, I wish you a good, well-deserved break. I'll be here enjoying the not-so-beautiful, remarkably windy Finnish summer weather for a while longer. Have a great early summer weekend, and we'll see you in the next one.